it's sort of in the tradition of Thich Nhat Hanh and his practices, and the name comes from the name of the monastery. There are 3 monasteries in the United States in the Plum Village tradition. The closest one to us is in Mississippi, and it's called Magnolia Grove. And that's where our speaker is right now, I believe, where he resides. But let me say a little bit about him. Get my notes. So yeah, I wanted to kind of give that introduction just in case you guys don't know the background, and also to kind of emphasize what it is, what a privilege it is for us to have a speaker who's a monk in the Plum Village tradition. It's not something we get to do very often, but we always are very grateful for that opportunity. So Brother Chan Phap Trien, Dharma name in English is True Opening Up of the Dharma, was ordained as a novice monk in 2009. He received full bhikkhu ordination, bhikkhu just means monk, in 2012, and received the lamp transmission as a Dharma teacher in 2019. And he is currently abbot of the Bamboo Hamlet at Magnolia Grove Monastery in Mississippi. I'm gonna read this next part because I love it. Brother Phap Chien first encountered Thai. That's a name, another name for Thich Nhat Hanh. It just means teacher. So it's sort of a familiar name for Thich Nhat Hanh. So Brother Phap Chien first encountered Thai and the Plum Village community as an 8-year-old when his family attended their first Plum Village retreat at the University of California in San Diego in 2000. He fell in love with the lifestyle and ease which he observed among the monks and nuns. And at age 16, he knew that he wanted to become a monk himself, and his family allowed him to pursue this. He went to Plum Village in France to study and follow with Thai and the community there, and to receive his monastic training. So Brother Phap Trien, thank you so much for joining us today. And before you get into your Dharma talk, feel free to share anything that you would like to share about Plum Village and the tradition that I might not have touched on. Turning it over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Just want to make sure everybody can hear me okay and comfortably. Okay, great. Well, once again, thank you so much for having me. It was I think we, at the monastery, we got this request a couple of weeks ago. And when we got it, I hopped on it immediately. I don't know why, something called me to it. And so, something, it was like a calling. I guess you could kind of say it's very similar to about when I made the decision to become a monk. It was when I heard that the Dallas Meditation Center requested for one of us to speak. I don't know, I just volunteered myself, and I felt very happy, and I'm just so happy to be here this evening with you all and participate in the activities of the Sangha. A little bit more about myself is I was born in the U.S. and my parents were refugees from the Vietnam War, and I actually grew up in Mississippi, not too far away from Magnolia Grove, about maybe 40 minutes away from Magnolia Grove, and so this is kind of home for me, and so it's such a great joy. And I've been living here at Magnolia for almost 9 years now, and practicing. And I don't know, maybe some of you have come by, and maybe we'll see some of you in the future at the monastery, or maybe you'll find us in Dallas, who knows. I just wanted to take this opportunity just to just share a little bit. Usually when our teacher Thầy, when he says the Sangha convenes together, it's like a celebration. It's a celebration of togetherness. It's a celebration of life. It's a celebration of just us taking care of oneself. He always called it a Dharma festival. When a Sangha connects or when a Sangha comes together. Because, when we think of a festival, we think of something very festive, we think of a party, we think of We don't think much about sitting meditation. We don't think much about walking meditation when we think of a festival. But actually, our teacher wants us to kind of use the coming together as a festival, as a celebration of life. And so for me, I see this, coming together as a celebration, as a reflection upon our living, our being, and our togetherness. One of the important teachings in Plum Village practice, and that our teacher kind of spoon feeds to other monastics and his disciples, is siblinghood, is togetherness, is living harmony together. And so that's a really big thing, and that's what really inspired me to become a monastic and to be a part of community, is the beauty of living together, the beauty of harmony, the beauty of togetherness. I wanted to focus my sharing today about who is the Buddha and what is the Buddha. The reason why is because we're kind of in the weeks of Vesak, which is in Buddhist terminology is the Buddha's birthday. And so a lot of the Buddhist traditions are using this time to celebrate the Buddha's birthday as a reminder of the historical Buddha, in a sense. But I'd just like to share a little bit about the spirit, or what is the spirit of the Buddha's birthday in Plum Village tradition, and what our teacher has taught to us, and what we practice here at the monastery. And not only do we see the Buddha as our teacher, or our historical teacher in a sense, but I think one of the things that is very funny is actually, I think the Buddha is one of the most misunderstood people in the world, or in history. Why is that? Because he was just a person looking for how to deal with his suffering. One of his teachings that he teaches is the Four Noble Truths, and which is the first noble truth being suffering, the second being the path leading to suffering, the third being the end of suffering, or the cessation of suffering, and the fourth being the path that leads to the cessation or the end of suffering. And that's really kind of the teachings that the main, when we say like meat and potatoes, is or veggies and potatoes, is the Four Noble Truths. And many, especially living here in Mississippi, and when we go out into town, a lot of people see me, and they see I'm a monk, and they always ask, "What are you? What do you do? Who do you believe in?" And so, and of course, my response is, I'm a Buddhist monk, and I practice meditation, and what I believe in is peace and happiness. And because one thing that is very interesting about the Buddha was that, as we know about his story, is he used to be a prince living in a royal family, and there was a critical moment after his birth where there were these Brahmins that came, and they foretold his future, saying that he would be a very successful king and would rule over a kingdom, and very beloved by his village and his kingdom, or he would be a very life-changing, world-changing spiritual teacher. And this brought a lot of fear into his father, hearing that he would be someone other than a successful king. And so what his father did was that he went to all the means to protect his son from the outside world. So he kept him in the confined space of the castle of this kingdom, and seeing all of the pleasures in life, basically guarding him and protecting him from the so-called suffering. So the sickness, the death, I guess you can say the crimes, and so forth that happens in the kingdom, basically so that it leads him on this way to being a successful king. But the Buddha being or at that time, Prince Siddhartha, being a very wise child, he saw that there was something missing. Life couldn't be that good. There was something there. Life shouldn't be this good. And then one day he asked permission of his father to maybe walk outside of the gates, or just go to the gates with his entrusted servant, or his friend, which eventually became which is his servant. And the first thing that he saw was a person that was sick, going through old age and sickness. When he just looked outside the gate, and he was like, I've never seen this before. Out of my teenage years and so forth, never seen a person sick and dying. And that raised a huge question in Prince Siddhartha. And so he eventually, I'll just share very briefly the story of the Buddha. Basically, he eventually ran away from the kingdom just to search for these answers on why this person was suffering. What is this suffering? And so, fast forwarding to when he ran away from home and left his wife, left his child, to be in search of this calling, or be in search of the answer, or what we call the way, the practice. And then he went through very gruesome practices, asceticism, so forth and so on. And eventually he became the Buddha. So that's kind of a long story short. The name Buddha actually comes from the word in Sanskrit is awakening. And so that's where the Buddha got his name, is the awakened one. And so it's important for us to understand that, the awakened one. And what is the Buddha? Not only is he a teacher that taught us how to deal with our suffering, but it is also the awakened nature inside of us. One of the things that our teachers shared that always has an impact for me and kind of really shifted my vision, or my kind of perception on Buddhism, is we all have this nature which is called Buddha nature, or this awakened nature, this awakening inside of us. And actually, if we look at it, we're actually no different than the Buddha. Because one thing that is true is the Buddha was a human being. He was not a god. He was not a higher entity or higher being of life. He was a prince, but he was a human. He had 2 eyes, 2 ears, a nose, a mouth, skin, had all of the senses, no different than us. But he was able to reach this moment of enlightenment, or this moment of awakening. And we also have that capacity to be in touch with this awakened nature, to be awakened. Awakened from what? Awakened from ignorance, awakened from our suffering, our anxiety, our fear. These were all the questions that the Buddha was searching for. And luckily, he found a way for himself and shared that practice with all of us, and is continuing that practice. And we have been in touch with it some way or somehow. And so, being here in the meditation center, or for myself at the monastery, we get to practice hands-on. How do we take care of ourselves? How do we take care of our emotions? How are we aware of our suffering? How do we embrace our suffering, our difficulties, the challenges in life, but also the wonders of life, the fruits of our practice, the joy, the happiness, the happy moments in life. Without suffering, it's very difficult to find or define what is happiness. Suffering and happiness go hand in hand. For example, if we have an ailment in our body, for example, a toothache, if we're experiencing a toothache, maybe very difficult to eat, or we're just experiencing this pain throughout the whole day, and we're very aware of it. This is a source of our suffering. Can't eat, can't do anything, and just a lot of pain and suffering. But when we no longer have this toothache, we experience joy. We're able to eat again. We're able to not feel pain, this excruciating pain in our mouth. But maybe we're sitting here now and we're not aware of our toothache because we don't have one. And so, being a practitioner and looking deeply, we can always look back into our conditions of happiness. And also, the toothache is the suffering, but then if we see that we are taking care of that suffering, we experience happiness. So without the toothache, we can't experience the happiness of not having a toothache. And so, one of the things as a practitioner is it's so important for us to always stop and look deeply what is going on in our daily life. Sometimes we're experiencing so much suffering that it becomes very overwhelming. And we see that it's difficult for us just to find a space to breathe. But even just one breath can be healing, can give us a pause in our daily life. This is what Buddha nature is, awakening is. When we think about enlightenment, or when we hear about enlightenment, we think about nirvana or something like an end goal. But actually, we can experience awakening in this moment, at any moment. And that's an encouraging part of the practice, is we can experience awakening or enlightenment at any moment because we have this awakened nature. But it starts with mindfulness. It starts with us being mindful of what's going on in our daily life. What's happening? Are we seeing what's going on with our emotions, our feelings? What's going on around us? Are we continuing to water the good seeds in us? Are we continuing to water the unwholesome seeds in us? So as a practitioner, it's important for us just to realize that when I think about the practice of mindfulness, I used to see it as a tool to help me in my daily life or with my challenges or something that I need. And once I'm finished with that, I put it back in the tool shed and then I use it whenever I can. But actually, mindfulness is actually not a tool. It's actually a way we live our life. Um, and this is something that I've learned and I try to practice is trying to be mindful in each moment, but also being unmindful, being mindful of being unmindful is mindfulness as well. And so it's okay if we're unmindful. But the moment we catch ourselves and see that, oh, I was unmindful in that moment, that's actually a moment of mindfulness. And so we can see what we can do in our daily life to continue to nourish our mindfulness. And I will be honest, it's very difficult to practice, for example, 1 hour straight or 2 hours straight or a whole day. That's very real for even for myself. And I've been a monastic for I think about 15 years or so. Um, but it always starts with one breath. Baby steps when it comes to the practice of mindfulness. And we slowly start to build. And when we have mindfulness, we have concentration. When we're able to concentrate our mind, then we're able to have insight. We're able to be in touch with the wonders of life. We're able to see and take care of our emotions, our anxieties, our fear. What are the roots of our fear? What are the roots of our suffering? We can go deep into our roots with the energy of mindfulness and uproot the negative seeds and root the positive seeds. Nurture what is good and uproot what is unwholesome. Let us listen to a sound of the bell and enjoy our breathing. And so during this season of Vesak, of the Buddha's birthday, there's a ceremony where we bathe the baby Buddha. So we would have a little statue of a baby Buddha and flowers and in a beautiful arrangement, and then we would all go and we would bathe the baby Buddha. And the spirit of bathing the baby Buddha is bathing that beginner's mind, that energy of love, watering the beautiful seeds in us, but also watering the seeds of awakening. We all have this awakened nature, and we can all experience this joy and happiness. And so sometimes, this is gonna sound very funny, sometimes the bigger the suffering, the bigger the happiness. Our teacher has a phrase is called no mud, no lotus. And so if we know a lotus flower can only be grown through with mud. The more muddier the mud, the more mud the mud, the more beautiful and fresh the flower is. You can't grow a lotus flower on marble. You can't grow it on, anything what we assume is something more clean. It needs to be mud. And so Sometimes we can look at the mud as our suffering, our challenges in life. And we can see if we take care of that mud, it can help us and turn into beautiful flowers, beautiful lotus flowers. And so don't be discouraged by our suffering. There's a reason why it's number one of the Four Noble Truths. It's because suffering is real, suffering is there. And honestly, to have no suffering, to have the end of suffering, it's not very realistic in terms of we can never not have like completely zero suffering. So it's okay to experience a little bit of it. But the question is, how do we know how to suffer? How do we learn how to suffer better? How do we become a more skillful sufferer? How do we know how to suffer? In that way, it helps us to be a more happier person. And so I know that an important thing about our practice is also to have rest. It's also to have well-being. So taking care of our mind, we need to take care of our body. We need to make sure that we're nurturing our body. We need to make sure that we're doing and taking care of any kind of ailments in our body. Because when our body is not right, our mind is not right. And when our mind is not right, our body feels it as well. And so body and mind are one. So when we're taking care of our mind, if we're taking the time to practice meditation, to calm our mind, to be back to our breathing, we're taking that chance to nurture our body, nurture each and every cell with the oxygen that we breathe in. And when we breathe out, relax our muscles, relax our whole body. Just these small moments of relaxing, if we're able to find any moment throughout our day, whether it be at home, when we wake up in the morning, when we brush our teeth, when we walk to our car before we go to work, or even while in the middle of an email, we can just stop and take a breath. These moments can be moments of nourishment. We're taking care of ourselves. And so this is where mindfulness becomes a way we live our life. And when we practice to live our life in mindfulness, we can see life become more rewarding, more something as a gift, as a treasure. And last thing I want to end on is some of us, we may have experienced a very difficult past, or we have a lot of challenges in life that carry on to this moment. But one of the things that can contribute to our awakened nature or our Buddha nature is seeing that we can create our beautiful future now. So this moment will eventually become the past. This breath will eventually become the past. Have we taken that chance to take care of it? And when we take care of it, we're actually taking care of our future. So we can create a better past now. With our breathing, with our steps. I remember someone asked our teacher, is there anything other than breathing and walking? Asked our teacher that question. Is there anything deeper than breathing and walking? And our teacher, being the Zen master that he is, he said, no. Nothing more than breathing and walking. Because that's life. We need to breathe in order to live. And walking helps us to also center our breathing, connect body and mind. And so sometimes we want to search for something deeper, but actually let's start with our breathing, and actually our breathing can lead us to something more deeper inside. And so during this time, yeah, I encourage everybody to find that time and that chance to find little moments in your daily life to breathe or to um, come back, um, even if it's for like 30 seconds, because that can be very helpful for us in the long run. An important thing about the practice is diligence, is to be a little diligent. And the more diligent we are, the more fruits we will see in our practice. And so it's just a little bit that I like to share in terms of a sharing. And so maybe I will pass it back on to, and then we'll continue on to the next session. So once again, I think something very important that was mentioned earlier was we get to choose our dharma, and so whatever you hear and you feel is helpful, please take it with you. If you see anything that you are discouraged by or is not helpful, it's also okay, because the thing is the practice is our practice, and we find what works for us. And so we find every person has their own way to reach their awakened nature. And so if somebody likes sitting, great. If someone doesn't like sitting, it's also okay. That is their piece. And so that's the encouraging thing about the practice. And so, like, for example, there's some monastics that really like to have sitting, there's some that really like to have walking, and there's some that really like to have ice cream. And so, these things are to be mindful and to have these moments of happiness. These are little awakened moments that can bring joy in our life. And we see the nourishing things in our life. And so the practice should be enjoyable. It shouldn't be anything that is, we shouldn't have to force ourselves to do something we don't want to do. In the practice, it should be enjoyable. So for example, if you're sitting and you feel that your body is hurting and you can't sit any longer, but even though there's 10 minutes left in the sitting session, we don't want to disturb others, but also relieve your pain. There's no point in sitting and forcing yourself to continue to experience pain. So the practice should be something enjoyable, not something that we're forcing ourselves to do. And in this way, when the practice becomes enjoyable, we become more encouraged and become more diligent with the practice. So thank you for listening.